What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the LakerCentral pregame show. I'm Alex. That's Vinay. Vinay, the Lakers have ran off what? Four in a row? Undefeated on the road. And tonight they take on the Pelicans. We get to see some of the guys that we were hoping would at one point grow up to be Laker superstars, but they're gone. Anthony Davis is in the house. We won a championship, and all is well. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the pre and post game content. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts. So, Vinay, man, the young guys are coming back to LA tonight, and I think Zoe is out though. I think Zoe is out, but we get to see Bi, who clearly has grown up into a young stud, man. So, what are your just overall thoughts about tonight's matchup?
I think they're a good team. They're clearly, from the games I've watched of the Pelicans, it looks like they're sort of still figuring themselves out identity-wise. I watched the Pelicans-Clippers game. I split screened the Pelicans-Clippers game with the what was the other game that was going on? I think it was the Nuggets Warriors was the other team the other game that I was watching, or it may have been somebody else. It may have been Sacramento, Portland, or something like that. It was like 2 days ago. Can't keep track anymore. But I was watching that Pelicans game, and I was just like, man, Bi looks so good. And obviously, Laker fans have acutely paid attention to all of the different things that have gone on with the Pelicans because we are interested in seeing the futures of Lonzo as well as Bi and Josh Hart to some degree. And so they looked good in spots, and then they didn't look good in spots. And it's pretty clear that the Pelicans seem to be kind of figuring out whatever this new system or new way of playing is for Stan Van Gundy. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. I'm not surprised that Ingram continues to be a great player. Hopefully one that, eventually, he got an all-star nod, but he becomes like a regular feature in the all-star game. I really think he's great. And so I just don't know what version of the Pelicans we're going to see tonight. They did lose a close game. They were down like 18 to the Clippers. They came roaring back. They were only down by 4 until Ty Lue had to put both Kawhi and Paul George in the game. That was for the folks that didn't watch that game. Kawhi and PG when Doc was trying to, or sorry, not Doc, Ty Lue was trying to stagger them. It wasn't going very well. At least that game it wasn't, and so he had to play them both. So that kind of gives you the idea of like the Lakers have to be good because this is a team that can score if you're sleeping. And the guy that they had off the bench, who I think started that game, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is the cousin of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he had a very good game against the Clippers. And so I don't know if he's going to have some hot shooting. If Laker fans remember when we played Chicago, Kobe White and Zach LaVine were shooting very well, and Zach LaVine came right into LA and started off with a bang in that first quarter. So young Pelicans team, a little bit different, a little disjointed sometimes at times, but we're gonna get to see Zion tonight as well and see what else he has to show and how the Lakers match up with him too. So I'm very curious to see how the Lakers look against yet another young team. This is not like OKC. There are guys on this team that are overwhelming talents. So, and they have a bench. So when they go to the bench, it's not going to be like they're just going to roll over like OKC did to some degree. So very curious to see how they look. We also know that New Orleans, their GM, PBO, whatever position he is, EVP of operations is David Griffin. And we know LeBron never forgets anything. And so I wonder if LeBron still remembers what David Griffin said last season about him wanting to be a championship and still being the same animal when it comes to winning. So, I'm hoping for a really good. Love to see a repeat of that OKC game where they come out with good energy, good offensive energy, and the bench does the same.
Yeah, I'm looking for a dominant performance from Anthony Davis, man. I mean, the last couple times we played against them, he's averaging 36 and 12. He's had a couple 40-point games. I mean, he's far and away better than anybody the Pelicans have. They're like 13th in the West. So I know that, after the Anthony Davis trade went down and then they ended up getting Zion. A lot of people thought, oh, the Pelicans, they were looking up and they were maybe ready to kind of make a playoff run, at least eighth or seventh seed, like now. They don't look
Mm-hmm.
like it, man. And maybe they're a young team still. They're dealing with an unprecedented season and all these different things. So maybe that's kind of why they're struggling to kind of figure out what they want to do. Plus, they've had a lot of trades. Drew is gone and all that kind of stuff. But regardless,
Right.
they are not. As far as I'm concerned, they're not a challenge to the Lakers. If the Lakers are locked in like they've been the last couple nights, this should be another 10 or 20 point blowout. Pelicans are a much better team though, talent wise, than some of the other teams that we faced recently.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Houston was a very talented team. They had James Harden, they had John Wall, Boogie, and all those guys, but Christian Wood, but they were going through their own situation. OKC just did
Mm-hmm.
not have the talent to match up. But Pelicans could certainly steal a game tonight. But
Sure.
you're right. David Griffin, he did make comments about LeBron kind of not having the same fire, the same passion to be a champion. And lo and behold, LeBron is a champion all over again. Lo and behold, Anthony Davis is a champion for the first time, right? And the Lakers, they've got the best offense in the NBA. They've got one of the top defenses in the NBA. They're shooting lights out. Everything is clicking for this team right now. They're undefeated on the road. Um, they're locked in, man. Like they could have easily
Yeah.
came into this season and just kind of trotted along and said screw it, we'll turn it on come playoff time. But they seem to be
Mm-hmm.
figuring things out early and taking everything seriously. So I'm curious to see what the Pelicans look like. I haven't watched them a whole lot this season. Admittedly, I only really pay attention to the Lakers. And I look, I pay attention to the other title contenders, but aside from that, some of the younger teams I don't pay a whole lot of attention to. But
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what they look like tonight. Zoe this past off season, he didn't get his contract extension like some of the other guys from his draft class did. Even Kuzma got his
Mm-hmm.
extension, but Zoe's
Mm-hmm.
not playing tonight. So, um, I don't know what to make of the Pelicans right now. I don't know where they're really at, but the Lakers should win tonight, barring any kind of mental lapse or letdown.
Yeah, they don't have as good of a record. Obviously, they're undefeated on the road. The Lakers are undefeated on the road, but they've been kind of lackadaisical when they're at home. And
Mm-hmm.
it could just be home cooking. It could just be Vogel telling the guys, "Hey, take it easy. Don't worry about practices and film sessions. You guys are at home.
Yeah.
It sucks to be on the road, so enjoy time with your family. And we'll take the game as it comes. Um, the wins and losses don't matter because we don't even know if we're gonna have if there's gonna be a home court advantage. So with fans or whatever. So that it's not really a big deal right now. But it'll be a good test in terms of the Pelicans run Zion and Steven Adams as their 4 and 5 in their starting lineup, and that's Steven Adams is a big guy, so it'd be very interesting to see how he matches up against Gasol and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm very interested to see, and it's a theory that I've had, is that I think the league is 1 year behind the Lakers in terms of what they're actually doing. So I think last season, people didn't realize that the Lakers weren't trying to shoot a whole bunch of threes unless they had to, and they would just attack the rim and we'd overwhelm them on the interior. And to some degree, the Lakers have done that this season too as well, but they're much more selective, right? We're not just trying to like bulldoze our way to the rim every single time because we have guys that can actually shoot and they can shoot at a decent efficiency. We've talked about Caruso shooting better. We've talked about Kuzma shooting better. We've talked about all these different guys, Schroeder shooting better and stuff like that. Because all these guys are shooting better from three, and especially Anthony Davis, obviously. LeBron himself, I'm just listing off the entire roster now at this point. But because we're actually a much better three-point shooting team, I think people still think that we're going to keep going to the rim. So one of the things that I'm going to be very interested to see is if the Pelicans also fall into that trap. Are the Pelicans going to defend us like a team that they think needs to drive to the rim every single time to get a good quality possession? Because if that does happen and they do defend our team that way, it could be another big night for Anthony Davis from the perimeter. Like he may just get a whole bunch of really quality 3-point looks and stuff like that. And same thing for LeBron and all these other guys. Like we know that the Pelicans are like a young, scrappy team. They've got guys that'll get after it and stuff like that. So there's no surprise about that on the defensive end. But like from what I saw with the Clippers game, the Clippers don't run a very complicated offense.
No.
But even then, the Pelicans were falling asleep, and giving up wide open threes. And much more complex of an offense. They don't run a very simple offense. but they run a very like effective, high passing offense. So there should be some really good quality looks for us as a team uh, on the perimeter and stuff like that. The ball's moving the same way. And then on the other hand, the thing that I want to see is what does the Lakers' interior defense look like? Like we've seen Montrez play significantly better after he's gotten more and more used to the game. We've also seen, Gasol become much better. Last game, he was sensational, blocking shots and stuff like that, getting his body in between the rim and not fouling and stuff like that. So Zion's going to put a lot of pressure on the rim. Steven Adams is a big boy. Like he's going to try and, get shots at the rim too as well, out of pick and roll and stuff like that. So I'm going to be very, very interested to see how the Lakers respond to a team that isn't as 3-point happy as some of the other teams that we've played against. They don't take their 5-man and put them all the way out on the 3-point line. That guy's right there mucking it up in the middle. So the Lakers rebounding will be important. Defensive rebounding will be important. So does Kuzma continue to grab all those defensive rebounds and come in and help? That'll be important. Those kind of things will be important because it looks like the Pelicans run a more traditional style offense compared to the more modern analytically inclined offense. So be very, very excited to see this matchup, obviously because of our young guys, and also just because this is a more typical kind of offense, not something that's that we see with like Houston or Dallas and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I want to talk about the Lakers 3-point shooting because it's been exceptionally great this season. But I want to take a quick minute and kind of go sideways because this is always interesting for me. So in the comments, right, shout out to Creative Arts. I guess he saw the segment on KCal9, and that's what brought him to this to the pregame. So Creative Arts, thank you so much, for catching that segment and coming here. We really do appreciate that. But what's funny is that he asked, "Was I a journalist?" And shout out to Mimi, who was always in the comments. She answered for me and said, "I'm a full-time banker and a part-time sports journalist." It's so crazy that somebody knows what I do for a living, what my real job is, and so. That's extremely humbling. So thank all you guys for doing, for jumping in these pre and post games and listening to the podcast. We really appreciate that. But back to the conversation at hand. So about their 3-point shooting, for years, man, the Lakers couldn't hit the side of a barn, right? And now, they had to get to the rim. They had to. That was kind of their style of play. They had LeBron, Anthony Davis, they had these big guys, but now they're knocking it out the park. And I was tweeting this earlier. They're third in the NBA. They're shooting 39.6%, which is so. To put that in context, they finished the season last year 21st in the NBA, and they're now third in the NBA. KCP and Caruso are both shooting over 50%. Matthews is shooting over 40%. Schroeder, Kuz, LeBron, Anthony Davis are shooting over 37%, and Keith is over 34%, and that's all on 2.5 attempts a game. They're shooting lights out, man. And I don't. Do you remember what was the last Lakers team that could actually hit big shots and could actually shoot? I don't even know.
I don't know. The blueprint of the Lakers has never been a 3-point shooting team ever. In my 20 years, I don't even remember a time where we had guys that were just coming down, shooting at threes. We used to have our specialists. Like Fisher was actually a specialist for a 3-point shooter specialist. Rick Fox, to some degree, obviously Robert Ory.
Yep.
And then we also had, who am I thinking of? Vujicic was also another guy who was like an example of that. Ariza for a little bit. He was also a good 3-and-D kind of guy for us. So, but we never had multiple guys, right? Like Kobe wasn't going in and trying to average, trying to average, but he wasn't taking 6 threes a game. Obviously he would have some games where he was super hot and stuff like that. From 3 and he'd have those scoring explosions, but he wasn't looking to shoot threes. He'd usually just do whatever the defense would give him, which was usually the mid-range or at the rim and stuff like that. So it like I said, it feels like we're one step ahead of what people probably think that we are. Right. The craziest part is if we just look at totals, right, through 13 games or whatever that we have going on. You gave the per game totals, but our leading 3-point shooter on our team in terms of volume is LeBron at 83 attempts so far through 13 games for a guy like LeBron. And the crazier part is he's shooting almost 39% from three. That like you're talking about like that's like a Kevin Durant number. You know what I mean? Like in terms
Yep.
of like that 3-point shooting that he's had going on, and you know the next highest amount of threes that have been taken through 13 games is Kuzma at 61. He's at 38%. I'm rounding up, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, Schroeder at 43. He's at 37%. So like the percentages make so much sense. But I think the way that they're getting those shots for each other, like it's not forced. It's so it feels like it's very much within the flow of the offense, and that's kind of the best part of this all. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that you and I have always talked about is it's not about whether it's a shot at the rim or whether it's a shot on the perimeter or whether what it is. It's about the quality of that shot. Are these desperation threes that we're taking? Are these wide open threes because the defense is like LeBron's having to suck in four guys because nobody
Mm-hmm.
else can get to the rim and then he gets a wide open. You know what I mean? Like these are not those kind of plays. So obviously, sometimes those kind of plays happen, but
Mm-hmm.
it feels like a lot of these, a lot of coming out of just like good organic action, not and I feel like this season has been a season where we haven't relied on LeBron to be the guy who generates all the shots for everybody. You know, like the driving kicks, the driving kick action or out of the post. Obviously, there's times in crunch time and stuff like that where he kind of takes over and does his thing and sets guys up. But it's pretty awesome because it almost feels like LeBron is unpressed, and that's like the term that I keep using. That it seems like he's very unpressed when it comes to running his offense and stuff like that. And you know what we saw on this road trip is he's just like vibing, man, like an old man. He's just like playing basketball, like he's at Equinox or something like that, and
Mm-hmm.
not even like stressing himself. And I think that's great because I think that allows everybody else to kind of get more and more into the feel of how LeBron plays and how Anthony Davis plays, and understands, you know, I need to stand over here when LeBron does this, and when he's going in this direction, I need to focus on defense and focus on my guy. Or when he's not doing well, I need to cut and all that sort of stuff. So it's been really great. But I would say, you know, them being this good of a 3-point shooting team, I don't know if anybody really expected them to be this good. You know, we thought we were just hoping that they'd be average. Like if
Right.
they're a league average 3-point
Mm-hmm.
shooting team, we'll be great. But these guys are like even beyond that. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, so I think I saw some crazy stat the other day, and I don't know if it's true, but it was something like 90% of the Lakers 3-point shots have been wide open, uncontested 3-pointers. It was a ridiculous stat, and
Yeah.
their shooting has been phenomenal. So I do have a little bit of audio from Frank Vogel on their shooting, and he talked about LeBron. So let me just play his audio really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it starts with I think with the way LeBron's shooting the ball from the perimeter. That gives us a burst in that statistical category. But we have a deep team that proficient 3-point shooters, and we're continuing to grow our shot identification. What are good shots? What are bad shots? Our team is trying to work for shot quality, not forcing, and trying to be efficient in everything we do. So, if we're focused on high quality threes, we're going to shoot a high percentage.
I mean, there you have it. And the question is, and Bethany asked this in the comments, do we think these percentages are sustainable? I mean, it's only what 13 games in, I think. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
think this is fool's gold right now?
Well, I mean, because it's a very good question. I don't know if it's sustainable in the sense that like it's gonna stay in like the high 30s, you know,
Right.
like in 37% plus. I'm sure that there will be some stretches where we come down to earth a little bit, where 35 or 33%. But I would, while that clip was playing, I actually want to go look it up. The Lakers have attempted. Let's see here. I'm looking at about. I'm just gonna do the math here, guys, real quick for us. So the Lakers have attempted 21 plus 2. 412 as a team. These are team stats, okay? So the Lakers have attempted as a team 412 threes
Mm-hmm.
through 13 games. Of those 412 threes, 7 plus 2, 2 divided by 412. Wow. Okay. So of those 412 threes, about like 94% of them are either open or wide open.
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard something like
That's
that.
how to describe. Yeah,
So,
that's an insane number of threes to be wide open.
but to your point, do you think they're wide open because teams are a year behind, so teams still think we're just trying to get to the rim? Like, do teams understand that this is, we've got competent 3-point shooters now?
I I think teams still think that we're just going to go to the rim. I think they think that like, oh, if Anthony Davis gets it on the perimeter, he's just going to attack the rim, and so
Right.
they're like waiting back at the rim, and they don't realize that Anthony Davis could shoot like 40% from three if you leave
It's
him wide open.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with LeBron. I think like last couple games, teams have been going underneath the pick and rolls, and so LeBron's been stepping right into that three with no issues, and he's making them at a ridiculous rate. And I didn't even notice that number, so I'm so surprised that you mentioned it. But it's just like that's an enormous like in terms of like shot quality, you can't get any better than that from the perimeter. You know what I mean? And really, the only thing that you would do when you look at those three attempts is you'd have to look and see how much effort is being put into generating those. And just off the top of my head and using my memory, like I wouldn't think to myself that we've been like exerting too much energy to get those quality open looks for ourselves. So that's got to be a great sign. And so to answer Bethany's question originally, does it stay that high? I don't know, because I think some teams eventually will be like, I think at some point the league is going to be like, oh crap, okay, the Lakers can actually make threes, so we have to run their guys off the line. But then that just plays into our natural advantage, which is
Right.
you don't want Anthony Davis at the rim, you don't want LeBron at the rim. Dan Schroeder is a blur, so you don't want him at the rim either. Like it plays into our advantage that like we can get to the rim. So if we were already a team that spent all last season getting to the rim and putting pressure on the rim, and now all of a sudden we can shoot threes, so you have to come out and chase us, or you have to give us wide open threes. That's going to be a problem. And I think a lot of high IQ guys are on this team, and they know how to, or even like for great quality shots. And you and I have talked after a lot of these games. The games that the Lakers have lost, it's very clear that those games they have not put effort in defensively. But when they even put in like an average amount of defensive effort on a nightly basis, they don't go from winning games by 5 to 10. Like they're winning games by like 15 plus points, double digits. And I would expect for whatever reason for them hopefully to have that same defensive synergy. Seems like ever since Anthony Davis said that we got to stop screwing around on the defense end and we have to lock in, this team has been locked in and loaded. And we may get another game, man. We may get another game where the starters come out, airtight with their defense, and we'll see how their offense looks. And if they come in airtight with it, they may build a lead. The last couple games, they've been building double-digit leads before the bench even steps on the floor. The first guy steps on the floor, and that's a luxury to have compared to last season. Because last season we were struggling a lot to put up points early in the game, and so it'll be very interesting to see how the Pelicans handle it. If they're not ready, the Lakers can definitely overwhelm them. But like I said, the Lakers are at home, so it could be a trap game for us just because the guys have been kind of trying to relax with their families and whatnot.
I think the starters might be a plus 29 on the season. Mimi, I know you're out there. If you could double check that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. But I think that they're plus 29. And what's great right now, man, is that the entire team is available tonight. And we haven't seen Matthews the last few games because he's been dealing with that sore Achilles. So I'm glad that that Achilles has gotten better, or he's doing better. It's not worse than what maybe it could have been. But the full roster is there tonight, and so the Lakers have been blowing teams out. LeBron and Anthony Davis. What'd you say?
I was gonna say our true starting lineup of James, Gasol, Davis, Schroeder, and Pope. They have only appeared in 8 games together, over 113 minutes total. They are a plus 66 in those 8 games. And let's see what their offensive rating has looked like. When we do that, that net rating for that starting lineup is a plus 29, which is it has an offensive rating of 131, which is an absurd offensive rating to have, and a defensive rating of 101, which is actually pretty good. The closer you get to 100 in today's NBA offenses, that's really good. So that is a very, very ridiculous number. They're a very good rebounding team when they have that roster out there. It's just, and they don't even play at a ridiculous pace. Their pace is under 100, which means that they're not playing at a very, very fast pace to try and generate as many shots as possible. So through 8 games, those are very, very great numbers for that team to have. Even the few games where it's been the next most used lineup or minutes wise is the one that has Kuzma instead of Pope. That the net rating of that lineup is 7.1, and the offensive rating comes down significantly, obviously. But the defensive rating is like 92, which is freaking great. That's like all defensive level defense. So it's not too much to complain about from that point. But that starting lineup is a problem, man. It's really good.
They've been great this year, and the best part is the second unit. When they're running Anthony Davis with the second guys, they're not blowing big leads. They're sustaining the leads if they got them. They're staying within games, and so they've been great. I did want to switch gears a bit and talk about COVID, and I actually want to get your opinion because you're out there in California. Sure. So I hope I don't jinx the Lakers when I ask this, when we talk about this, but we're seeing more and more teams now, either have to cancel games, players are testing positive, and like here, in Maryland, D.C., like just this morning, Shams reported 5 Wizards players have tested positive for COVID, right? Karl Anthony Towns, he lost his mom from it. He's now tested positive of COVID.
Yeah.
Dame has talked about, Dame, of the Blazers. He said he doesn't think that he would want to go back into a bubble. He said, but, you need to challenge the teams and players to be respectful and mindful of what's going on and to be safe.
Yep.
I know California, they're dealing with it as bad as anywhere else in the country. Are you surprised that the Lakers haven't found themselves, having to sit anyone out? I mean, I know Caruso had to sit out because he was in health and safety protocols, but it never came out that he tested positive. Are you surprised the Lakers have kind of managed to stay clear of all this stuff?
Yeah. LA, I would say, is a hotbed for outside activities. I know LA County shut things down for a little bit in January completely. So you couldn't really do anything outside, but I don't know at what point they're going to lift some of those restrictions. But like, I wouldn't say I'm surprised, but I'm surprised in the sense that like I'm surprised that we haven't gotten it from another team, and it may just be because we haven't played any of those teams just yet. Yeah. But it seems like, and obviously I'm not going to put the onus on like just the Wizards or if there's any specific team where they're being very lackadaisical about dealing with this sort of thing. But like, it's just, I'm surprised that this. I thought if one team got it, like if one team was contaminated and it was not contaminated, but like infected or whatever, and if there's multiple players on that team that was infected, I thought the league would shut down. To be honest, like I thought it would spread so quickly between all the other players and stuff like that throughout the league, just because of the nature of the games and just kind of the way basketball is played, that it would end up becoming a big problem. And so to some degree it has for some teams, but it's just like we're seeing a lot of like recurring characters in this sort of situation. Like clearly there's something up with Washington because they haven't played in like 5 days, I want to say. Like, and now they just keep having more and more guys, run into that issue. So I don't know what's going on in their locker room or organizationally what's going on with them. We've seen Michael Porter Jr. for Denver. He was already quarantining, registered another positive test, and then he has to stay another 2 weeks. So it's just like, I understand you put the politics aside, you put your belief, obviously we both have very strong feelings about like people ignoring science, but it's America. So you believe what you want to believe, but it's just, the part I don't seem to understand is like the responsibility. Like obviously this thing became even more magnified with Kyrie's situation, right? Like, the news came out that he was only being fined $50,000, but because of him knowingly violating protocol, and obviously because we saw it on social media, it cost him like $800K or something like that, like some enormous amount of money for, and that's a lot of money out of a paycheck. And so I'm not surprised that the Lakers haven't gotten it. I think some Laker players, I think it was Kuzma or it was Caruso or somebody specifically said that nobody wants to be the guy that like jeopardizes this team's ability to be effective. And I think that's cool. I think that's, if I was of a different mind, I would understand if somebody turned around and heard that comment and said, well, you can do whatever you want. Like you're not beholden to like what happens to one of your teammates, or you shouldn't constrict your life based on whatever else is going on. There are probably folks that have that stance. We saw George Hill of OKC say, "Hey, I'm a grown man. I don't need to follow these rules or whatever it is. I'm going to do what I have to do." And so, like, I understand both stances. Like from a human being perspective, individual human being perspective. But I think it's kind of cool that the Lakers roster team as a collective has this mindset that, it's just like, it's not like, oh, if somebody gets it, we're disappointed in you, but it's more like, hey, you trust me, I trust you to be responsible,
Right.
And it's a good example of the like the camaraderie they have, the cohesiveness they have as teammates and stuff like that. And if the Lakers, if somebody on the Lakers, like if LeBron gets it, or even Kuzma, somebody notable on the Lakers get it, it would be like on the national headlines, like, oh, are these guys being responsible? Are they being irresponsible? But the fact that the Lakers haven't done it, it feels like it's not as big of an issue. And I would say also maybe like I think the Clippers have done a decent job too as well of just being very careful and stuff like that. I don't think any of their major players have run into those issues. But at some point the league has to look at this and go, okay, man, like how is it the same guy over and over again doing it? Like at some point the league has to say we have to suspend you or something.
I agree,
because you're jeopardizing your entire team to the point where they're postponing so many games that there's going to be like a crazy backlog of games that they're going to have to squeeze in. And I know, because of optics and stuff like that, you don't want a bunch of white governors and a white leader of the NBA and stuff like that to be the one who tells a bunch of black athletes or tells a specific black athlete, like, you're suspended because you're not responsible. But I don't know if it's going to come to that eventually at some point, because it's some guys, it just doesn't seem like they're being responsible, and for whatever reason, I'm not here to judge the reason. I'm just saying it's jeopardizing the business, the product, the teammates, and we still don't know what are the final long-term ramifications of getting COVID. And it could, affect the health of these, health of all these folks moving forward. So I don't know, man. It's such a dicey situation that I don't know. I don't know how you navigate this.
You're more diplomatic than me. You've always been when we talk about these kinds of subjects. I'm a little more like, whatever. But listen. So one, I do think that you have a responsibility to your teammates and everybody else in that organization. If you're going to opt to work, then you need to be responsible, because the league isn't forcing you to work. You can stay home and the league isn't going to penalize you. You won't get paid, but the league isn't going to suspend you or anything like that. So if you're not taking this seriously, or you're a grown man, do your own thing, then you need to sit out this season. That's number one. The second part of it is, imagine if you're a teammate of Karl Anthony Towns. Towns lost his mom from this, and you're a teammate that's not taking it seriously, or anyone else in the organization, and now you've given it to him. Who knows how he got it, but just like you're being lackadaisical. So like that's not fair to him or his family or anyone else in the organization. So you have a responsibility to those around you. I think that the league, like, I completely agree. Like, the optics of having, white owners and Adam Silver tell black athletes, hey, you have to do it this way. It's bad from an optic standpoint. But that's where, Michelle, who's the president of the Players Association, Michelle,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, that's
Michelle,
where she.
Oh my God, Michelle Roberts.
Michelle Roberts. That's when she needs to step in, because she's a black woman, and she needs to tell these guys, like, look, like, optics to the side, like, this is dangerous. And then beyond that part, it came out today that the league, they have a contract with Delta Airlines. The Mavs, they have their own jet, and I believe the Heat, they use their own jet, American Airlines Arena, and so the Delta isn't requiring their, the people on their aircrafts, their employees to test, right? And that to me is ridiculous in itself. So that, it was reported that, various people from these teams don't want to eat on the planes. And it's like, so if you're Adam Silver and you're the league, the airlines are already losing money. Like, they've been crying for the last year that they're losing money. The league is probably one of their biggest, vendors.
Clients.
Yep. Right, one of their biggest clients. like, if I was the league, I'd call up Southwest or American or anyone else and say, look, they're not testing their people. Are you guys like? You can't possibly subject your employees, your players, or anyone else in the organization, and put them on aircrafts with people who aren't being tested. Like, that's bad also, because for all we know, it's not the players being irresponsible. It's some of the vendors that they're associated with that's being irresponsible. So it almost feels like, to some degree, all that goodwill that Adam Silver had built up in the bubble, like, people are just waiting to peel that goodwill back and say, like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're starting to kind of fall apart the same way the NFL and Major League Baseball did.
Yeah, and it may get to that point, to be honest. Like, it's the media is not interested in the media has no incentive in portraying the NBA in a certain fashion. They're only interested in getting the engagement that they want. So even if it's, I mean, you should be outraged. I mean, NBA players should be upset that the league can't force Delta to, like, at least test their people or follow specific protocol. But at the same time, it's just like, it seems like that's just the direction it's going to go in eventually. Like, it seems like we're headed in that direction. We're headed in a direction where Adam Silver is going to have to say, either you guys are going to have to play these postponed games in a very condensed time period to make this work, or whoever keeps testing positive, regardless of the reason why, if you keep testing positive over and over and over again, we're going to have to suspend you or something. Because it just doesn't work that you... See, that's the hard part. Adam Silver, if I'm in Adam Silver's position, this is the way I see it. There's only two options to this. Either I let things continue the way that they are, and chances are by the end of the season, there's going to be a bunch of postponed games that we can't backlog and fit in, right? Because you're not going to be cutting into whatever that break is in between the schedule releases, because that's supposed to be a break for them, because we started the season off so soon in 70 games or whatever. We already have a play-in situation that's already set up, the play-in format situation. So there's already been adjustments made for competitive balance to accommodate for the early turnaround and the stuff that we've all agreed upon. But if the backlog of games ends up becoming too much, where it's very, like, now the player's safety is an issue, right? Because if he turns around and he says, look, I've had to postpone all these games, and some of these are nationally televised games, and because the players union, the players within your union are not responsible for taking care of themselves and all that sort of stuff. I don't know how the players can turn around and be like, well, no, you should still acquiesce to what I have to say. Like, no, they don't, because they're holding up their part of the bargain by making this work. Obviously, this Delta Airlines issue is different, but it's just like they're doing their part technically, like, from what it sounds like. I don't know the inner details. But Adam Silver could turn around and say, look, if you guys aren't going to do it, I have to start penalizing people because you guys are not taking it seriously. And I just don't know if it's avoidable. Like, the media is going to immediately, we already know what the media is going to do. The media is going to say, white leader of the organization, like Roger Goodell, penalizing guys for exercising their, freedom of rights and blah, blah, blah. We already know what direction that's going to go in. But it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with just responsibility to the collective unit. The NBA uniquely has a collective bargaining agreement that involves shared revenue. This is not like the NFL. This is not like the MLB. It's not revenue sharing in the same exact way. If the owners lose money, obviously it impacts them less than if the players lose money. But if there's one player, right, because the owners aren't showing up to these games and stuff like that, and they're not going around trying to contaminate each other's teams and stuff like that, that the players can't be responsible. Somebody has to step in and say, hey, what's going on? Why is Michael Porter Jr. repeatedly, repeatedly testing positive? And, like, it's actually hurting the Denver Nuggets because they need him, like, from a depth standpoint and stuff like that. So, like, either Michelle Roberts, and I don't know if they'll do it, either Michelle Roberts is going to have to say something behind the scenes or have a public conversation, stuff like that, through the reps and stuff like that, and say, hey, we've got to hold up our end of the bargain. Or Adam Silver is going to say, the players are making it impossible for us to finish the season because of how their freedom of movement is working and how they're handling this. So I have no choice but to fine these players because we have to get this under control within the league. And If I was Adam Silver, I would understand if that's the position that he has to take. I would in that direction. If something like that does happen, he'll turn around and he'll openly tell the players. He'll work with them. He'll say, "Look, you guys got to either get this together, or I can't have a Harden and Kyrie situation." And I think Kyrie is the precedent. You know what I mean? Like Kyrie was the first guy who actually lost game checks because of him violating protocol. So I think now what's going to happen is if we get more and more stuff like this where guys are just like not being responsible, not accidentally got sick, but like it's verified, like this guy's out in a public setting or doing things in a public manner, not wearing a mask, not keeping distance or whatever it is. I think he's going to start. What happened to Kyrie is what's going to happen. They're going to get a $50,000 fine, and then they're going to have to start forfeiting game checks. And I think that's the only way. That's the only way to send the message that, look, you can't keep doing this because it's hurting the product. You're hurting your own team, whether you care about it or not. And you're just making it much more difficult for this league to finish on time. And so that's my stance. I think if it gets in that direction, it's going to get messy. And the language is going to get real ugly. And the opposite side of vultures and sharks that love to intensify this stuff, politicize this stuff, are leech on to all that kind of stuff. But it seems like we're going to be headed in that direction if these players don't take it seriously for whatever reason.
And I love what Michelle said right here. I mean, look, the $50,000 is the most that they could find through the CBA, but Kyrie is lucky Silver didn't have him miss more games, right? Like, I think he got off easy. It's only going to be ultimately 2 games. But I can't be more clear about this part. And I've talked to Vinay about this a number of times. Like, most of these athletes, look, like 85 or 90% of the NBA is black. Everybody knows that. And aside from maybe the top 1% in the NBA, like, the money they earn is not generational wealth. Like, I need people to also understand that part. LeBron has generational wealth. Most of these guys are not earning generational wealth where the next generation, their children, grandkids, great-grandkids might be set for their lives. It doesn't work that way. So when you forfeit 2, 3, 4 game checks, and that adds up to 800, $1 million, 1.5 million, whatever it ends up being, that's a lot of money, man. And these players need to recognize that, one, Adam Silver is a commissioner that's willing to work with you. If this was David Stern, we saw how he was, man, in the 90s. Like, he was a different animal. Like, he did not care.
He would have said that. He would have said it's a zero tolerance policy. He would have said zero. And I would say that, and I don't know if Adam Silver may do this, but David Stern would have taken it one step further. He would probably have said that we're going to do contact tracing, and if we find out that the point of origin is the same player over and over again on a certain team, we're going to suspend that player and we're going to fine him heavily. Because I mean, you think about it in terms of like, let's say me and you are teammates and I'm following protocol, but you're not for whatever reason, and I get sick because of you, or I test positive because of you. And I'm filling out my paperwork or whatever it is, or whatever they have them do on the back end, saying, look, I'm only sitting with my family. I don't meet any extended family. I don't go out to eat. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm staying strictly within the guidelines. And all of a sudden I got a positive test. But then I find out you're the reason why all of us have positive tests.
Yep.
Like, I would be pretty pissed because I don't want to lose game checks over it. So you should lose those game checks because you clearly don't understand like the health ramifications the competitive ramifications of what you're doing. And so, that's the way I kind of see it. That responsibility is an important thing. We should not take that lightly. And as it relates to what our original question was, with the Lakers, like, it's good that these guys are keeping each other. I don't know if they're keeping each other accountable, but they're keeping themselves accountable because they're thinking of their teammates first. And so I appreciate that of this team. Again, a very unique season. But it is good to see that our team has that sort of cohesion, even with all these new guys that we have on the roster, that they're willing to keep themselves accountable because they don't want to jeopardize this team's chemistry or the season in general.
Well, and your window to play sports is only so long, right? And it's even shorter when you're in a hunt for a championship. Like, usually your championship window was like 2 or 3 years, and after that it's over. We saw that in the early 2000s with like the Trailblazers, the Kings. Like, you get a really short window. What the Lakers do, what San Antonio has done, that doesn't happen for most franchises. Right. So I think for the Lakers, they're looking at this thing like, all right, LeBron is in year 18, and while he still looks superhuman, at some point, this is going to come to an end, right? Like, you can't waste all of this time. And I think for some of these other franchises that might not necessarily be playing for championships, they just might not care, man. Like some of these guys just
Yeah.
might not. From the leadership on down, they just may not care as much. And we know how this goes. Like to your point earlier, people believe in different things. Some people believe in science. Some believe in what's on the back of a napkin. Like they just simply don't care.
Yep.
And so, but I also do think, and I'm try and turn this back to basketball because I'm sure people are waiting for that part. But I do think that Joe Biden is going to be president in a few days, and he may very well tighten up things across the country. And we don't know how that might impact the NBA itself anyway. So guys may have to tighten up, their movement and their behavior. So, I don't want to see any of these guys sick. I don't want to hear about their parents or loved ones getting sick or anyone else in the front offices or anyone that works like in the stand, like any of these other people we don't even know about that have regular jobs with these teams. I don't want to hear about these people getting sick because there's somebody that's just not following protocol.
I agree. I completely agree. I hope they get it under control, man. I really do because we're fortunate as Laker fans that we haven't seen anything hit our team, but it just my largest concern is we're gonna play a team like the Wizards. We're gonna play some team where there's like one guy that's positive, the test doesn't come in on time, and one of our players get it. And that doesn't mean that's the end of the world or something like that. But obviously, we're just trying to keep the continuity going and stuff like that. So it's very precarious situation to be in. But I do know that possibly with the new presidency, there will be a big push to get those vaccines out and stuff like that. Hopefully, and to hopefully find some consistency and some normalcy as it relates to the whole pandemic situation.
So let's flip back to basketball for a second. So Frank Vogel's done a really good job, man. He's won a championship. The team has started off hot this season. Does anybody remember that he was the Lakers' third choice coming into last season behind Ty Lue and Monty Williams? Like, is that even a thing now?
I mean, maybe a fourth choice because if we remember, they also interviewed Kurt Rambis. Also, supposedly secretly interviewed Jason Kidd.
That's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of funny what Vogel has sort of what direction Vogel has gone in. I liked him a lot. I think one of the things that we were always concerned about with him when we were watching last season was like, will he be the adjustments coach that we need when teams start throwing different looks and throwing wrenches in the gear? And we saw that during the regular season. He did make small adjustments here and there with lineups. He would tinker with things around. But in the playoffs is where he was great. And he literally would do the same thing until you adjusted to it. And if it was working, he wouldn't change it until it stopped working, and then he would adjust. And it wouldn't just be a game-to-game thing. It would be quarter-to-quarter, timeout to timeout. And it's pretty awesome to know that, his story of success is very similar to just kind of like the Lakers' story of success, right? Like everybody had the Lakers pegged as like a 3-4 seed. So it's like the third best option, fourth best option. Famously, obviously, we already know NBA.com, ESPN.com. They didn't even have them, the anonymous GM polls, which I think are bullshit to begin with. I think they're just made up, and it's just writers that they actually do. I don't think any GM actually responds to those things. And so I thought it was really cosmic that our third or fourth option at head coach ended up being an excellent coach. And I'm glad that they brought on Jason Kidd, and I'm glad that they brought on Lionel Hollins. And I think like it's just a testament to just kind of also his approach has been phenomenal. Like he's very collaborative, and he's been very what do you think? Obviously you don't want to have too many voices in the room because if you do, then it gets confusing. But he, obviously he puts his foot down and kind of makes the final decision. But he's always open to listening to different ideas and stuff like that. And I think that's what's made this Laker team so good. That they have guys like that, and more importantly, he's open to listening to guys like LeBron and guys like Anthony Davis, and Rob. I would say even as a GM, there was a lot of scrutiny that was heaped on him, even outside of media, even within the fan base to itself. There's a lot of scrutiny that was piled on him at the time. David Griffin was a guy that people thought that, well, the Lakers maybe should take a look at him. Famously, Bob Myers. People were clamoring that the Lakers should write him a blank check.
Masai
We can see
Ujiri.
what the end, right? Masai Ujiri, yeah. Like, so we can see that like a lot of scrutiny with this team, but I feel like Vogel has done a tremendous job. He's done such a good job, kind of always being even keeled, and even when like the Lakers are rolling some teams, but he's never like, oh yeah, we're humming along. Like he doesn't even say it like that. He'll say stuff like, yeah, we're getting good quality shots, and we need to always remember that we need to continue getting good quality shots. So like there's just constant reinforcement of we need to always continue to try to be better, even when
Yeah.
we think we're at our best. And it's crazy because we've blown out teams like 3-4 games in a row now. But it's great. It's great that he has that mentality, because I think that kind of leaks out to everybody on that roster too as well.
I mean, it's easy to answer yes to the question I'm getting ready to ask you, because I mean he's won a championship, but is he better than he was in Indiana, or was he always a good coach? Because that Indiana team, I mean, they were a game 7 away from making it to the finals against against the Heat. But is he a better coach than everybody thought he was, or is it just he's got Anthony Davis and LeBron James?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think he's a really good coach. Um, And I think that's evident when we see that Pacers team, because even before they got to Miami, they had to beat some other teams to get there.
Yep.
And some of those, I mean, if you just think about it, the guys that were on that team that were contributors to that team, some of those core guys are not even in the league now. You know what I mean? And the star guy that he had at the time, Paul George, he was very young at the time. Paul George wasn't like the 30-year-old 28, 27 in his prime. Like he was still, I think, like 23, 24. He was a young guy still kind of figuring out his way. And Vogel was able to put him in a position to be successful and get the most out of him and stuff like that. So I think he's always been a good coach, but I think the conversation about evaluating coaches, and this is something that I saw with Steven, like how many of like the blue check NBA Twitter folks are doing with like Steven Silas. Like they're looking at Silas and they're waiting for him to be unsuccessful. Obviously, we know some of the reason why they do that. And I think the thing that's very difficult at times, and that people forget, is obviously talent. The guys that are on the floor are ultimately going to decide whether you're successful or not. But when we evaluate coaches, we have to evaluate coaches based on like, are you putting your guys in the best position to be successful? And sometimes that position may be not even on the floor. Like, hey, I can't play you in this series because it's just not working for you. That doesn't mean I don't believe you can be great. It's just, it's not this series, this matchup specifically. We need to try something different. And I think Vogel's always had that acumen. But I think obviously this is the first time that he's had very, very good talent too at the same time, So it's you get a combination of a guy who can be malleable in his style of offense and the style that he coaches, and then also like give him good quality talent, address the holes. This is that like Rob Pelinka, Frank Vogel synergy that we're talking about. Like find the guys that fix the issues, or improve on the issues that the team has, and the team can be successful. And like we talked about the Nets last time. The Nets they're going big, big fishing. They're going for the big names and stuff like that, and we'll see if that ends up resulting in a championship or a finals appearance. But the Lakers aren't doing it that way. They got their 2 stars, and now they're looking for guys who want to play their roles and be successful in their roles, and they are. So now it's just a matter of, can we consistently be great? Can we keep that motivation, keep that chip on our shoulder? And when the time comes in the playoffs, can we really buckle down and play the kind of championship level defense and offense that's needed to win a championship?
I know that people believe there are better coaches in the NBA right now. Maybe there are, but no matter what, he happened to be the best coach at the right time for this Lakers team, given everything that was going on. And he's managed the team really well this season. And the Lakers are blowing teams out. A lot of people talked about resting LeBron and Anthony Davis this year and what that would look like if they would miss games and not play back-to-backs and all those things. But here's a little bit of audio of him talking about like how those blowouts have helped him kind of manage their minutes, because they're not playing more than like 30 minutes some nights, less than that. So let me play that really quickly.
It's really just about winning the game. And when you get a bigger lead late into the third, into the fourth quarter, then you start thinking about, like you said, managing minutes and making sure guys are not overdoing it, giving your main guys an opportunity to rest. But also, giving guys like tonight, Mark and Keith, not typically in there at garbage time, but just an opportunity for them to get a little extra run, more rhythm, and more conditioning, all those types of things. It's an opportunity to get your young guys, put them in certain situations you want to see them, see what they can do. So there's definitely benefits to it.
See, I love that because no matter what, no matter how many minutes, how many, how much or how little Anthony Davis and LeBron play, by the end of the season, they're going to have played a lot of minutes. But guys like Keith, like them to get their rhythm, allowing them to kind of work themselves back into shape. I think that's important, particularly for a team like this. So he's managing this thing just very well right now.
Yeah, it's LeBron and Anthony's minutes are somehow lower than they were last season so far.
Mm-hmm.
Last season, they were both averaging like about 34, 35 minutes, which was less than 3/4 of basketball.
Yep.
So if we're thinking about our viewing experience, which is 2.5 hours of watching TV when you watch a Lakers game, 3/4 is cutting probably 45 minutes of your viewing experience out. So they're not that's a lot of basketball without them that we're watching. Obviously, game time is real time or whatever. But this season they're right below 32 minutes. So, if the offense is coming in, if the bench unit is coming in and preserving the lead, let them go through their motions. We don't need to bring LeBron back as quickly as we need to, or Anthony Davis as we need to. If it's a blowout, and if the very best case scenario, the bench comes in and extends the lead and is just rolling, that's even better. They don't have to come back at all. But I like the fact that he's not just like, because you don't save those minutes. It's not like you can put them in a bank and use them later or something like that. But I like how he's like that 30-minute number, 30 to 32-minute number is like, that's the right amount of basketball for these guys. Because we don't want them feeling like, I'm done with my shift and I'm done for the day. Like it kind of keeps them. It's just the right amount of minutes for them to like stay consistently within the flow of the game, because you don't want to lose any chemistry out of the process and stuff like that. So I think it's good, man. It's the minute distribution. The Lakers have been like going like 10, 11 deep, almost 12 deep at times too. Obviously we've had some injuries and stuff like that, but yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, we've got about 11 guys that are collecting at least 15 minutes or more a game. That's really good on a shortened season.
I mean, it's a good way to balance out the minutes and the rotation. And look, you've been a Laker fan your entire life. I've been a Laker fan my entire life. One thing that we know, it's not just about winning. You need to be exciting. The Lakers have to put out a certain kind of product. That's what fans expect. And the good part about this is, even with LeBron and Anthony Davis playing less minutes, guys like Schroeder, Trez, THT, Caruso, Keith, Kuzma, like they still play an exciting brand of basketball. Like even guys like Dudley, who don't play maybe as often as the other guys, like when they get in, fans are still really engaged with those guys. And those guys are running up and down the court. They're, throwing their threes up when they knock down a three or whatever. Like, it's an exciting brand of basketball, man. And it's a really fun time to be a Lakers fan. And you and I have probably said this more than maybe a lot of other people to fans. Just enjoy this time. Like, really enjoy the Lakers being this good, because I think we take it for granted sometimes because they go on a run every decade. But, like, it's COVID is COVID, and you don't know if the seasons get suspended and bubbles and all those kinds of things. Guys get hurt. But, like, fans should really enjoy how good this Lakers team is, because they might be able to pull off something special.
Yeah, and I don't know what their win-loss record is going to look like, but a lot of times, we always make a reference to the 1999-2000 first championship and then what they look like in the second championship. The year that they won the second championship, they started off 5-5 in their first 10 games. And by the end of their first 10 games, by the end of their first 15 games, 20 games, I think they finished like 14-6 or something like that through their first 20 games. So like they like, after the initial kind of rough bump in the road, getting back into game shape or condition, they started ripping off like big streaks and stuff like that, and we're seeing that now, right? Like they've got 4 in a row. They can make it 5. We could get it up to a point, get against Milwaukee and stuff like that, where we're carrying like a 5 or 6 or 7 game winning streak. And now all of a sudden that marquee matchup is now like everybody's tuned in to see what 2 potential finals contenders look like against each other. So saving those minutes, staying healthy, keeping everybody in a rhythm. Like we want to see what they look like when they play Milwaukee, assuming everybody's healthy and there's no issues. What does that lineup look like? Because we know that LeBron and Anthony Davis, they like to send a message to the rest of the league, and they're not all these guys. They're stuck at home, so the only way that they get to interact with anybody, because there's no fans, is on social media. So they're reading everything that everybody says about who, if the Nets are going to be the team that's going to be the team to beat now because there's 3 superstars and stuff like that. So I'm sure everybody's paying attention very, very closely, and they're going to be fully engaged for this. So I'm looking forward to tonight's matchup. I think one of my buddies messaged me saying on this other screen I think they were saying that Zion may not be playing tonight. I'm not sure.
There was something. He's a game time decision I saw.
Yeah, so I think they're missing 3 guys. I think Lonzo is still not playing tonight. Zion is a game time decision, and Bledsoe. I think Bledsoe is also a game time decision or something like that. And so we'll see. So I mean, look, Lonzo and Bledsoe aren't really great shooters, but I know Alexander Walker is a good shooter. I know that other kid that they drafted, Kira Lewis, is pretty good. He gets like a lot of De'Aaron Fox comps and stuff like that, comparisons. So we'll see. But no Zion, what does their offense look like? Do they go to a more spread out offense with one true big in Steven Adams and space the floor out a little bit more? It'll be interesting to see how they do that and how the Lakers respond to it.
Yeah, Lakers should win tonight. If they're focused, they're going to win tonight. But sometimes you can let your guard down when some of the the regular guys aren't playing, but they are playing against former Lakers. Anthony Davis is playing against his former team. That should be enough motivation all in itself, man. So, guys, we'll probably wrap up the pregame at this point. We've got about an hour to go before tip-off and let you guys relax and hang out with your families before the game tips off. As always, we greatly appreciate you guys joining us for the pre-games. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the pre- and post-game commentary. I think we'll be back for a post-game. Let's just see how I feel. As you guys know, I'm on the East Coast, so if I'm tired, that usually means we can't knock one out. So let's just see how I feel. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter as well, and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Apple, wherever you enjoy your podcast.
And I was going to say that, we'll probably try and do a recording or something like that this weekend. So, Alex, if you're not able to do the post game, it is a Friday, so can't really be mad. You can always get a nice early start to the weekend with a Lakers win.
Yeah, plus I've already started drinking my scotch for the Friday, so that always determines
somebody. I don't know who. I think it was Daniel Brown, Daniel or something. Yeah, I think it was Daniel who was asking, "Well, what were you drinking?" And so, Alex, you can let him know.
Daniel, so tonight I'm drinking Dewar's 15 Monarch. So it's not very expensive. It's a great bottle of scotch. I'd recommend it for anybody that. It's not a beginner's scotch, but it's a nice bottle of scotch. I'd recommend it to anybody. I've got a bottle of Glenlivet 15 downstairs also. I have that. And I've got a couple of different bottles of really high-end scotch downstairs also. But tonight, Dewar's 15 Monarch, it's a good bottle to have. So if we do a post-game or something, I'll bring it up here so you guys can see what it looks like. So anyway, thank you guys so much as always for checking us out for the pregame. We will check you guys out later. Thanks for watching Lakers Central.